This is my inner tube and it's going bye-bye because it's tubeless time. This makes a massive difference to the ride feel, and it also could save your life among all the other benefits. So there's a fair bit to know. This is what's coming up. Doesn't pop off like Kenda. Now I really like the tubeless feel under braking. It's quite controlled. Another benefit is you chuck away around 330 grams of...
The handling is so much different. It's like, once you stand upright...
Something about it just gives me so much confidence accelerating. It just feels like this is what the Tyre's meant to be. As my favorite. What's up everyone, I'm Jono, and this video continues on directly from my Tyre comparison video here, so I'll be using a lot of the same metrics as there. And now, I'm not just speaking bullshit about it really potentially saving your life. After this incident with Duff, his valve stem ripped off while in traffic, threw him in front of a car. So when I saw that, I decided to finally pull the plug on going tubeless. So not all rims are tubeless ready. What you have to look for is the bead lock, and that's this little hump in the rim profile, and that'll keep the bead from slipping off the rim because it doesn't have the tube to press it out anymore. Some of the benefits are that you won't get the ripped valve stem. Now I've had this happen to me. Luckily it went flat overnight, and another time when I was installing the tube, so that wasn't a drama for me. Another benefit is you chuck away around 330 grams of weight, so that's on the rotating mass. It makes a big difference to the ride feel. I'll get in later. So pinch punctures are now quite unlikely. Overall, it flattens out the Tyre feel. It just conforms a lot better, rounder profile, better cornering, and just good planted feel. And for this knobby pattern in particular, same as the K262, it really reduces that knife point. So it's just nearly better in every metric. Some of the cons of the tubeless install is that it's quite hard to install. I had to take it to a mechanic, a very high pressure air compressor, to pop it onto the rim. I couldn't do it myself. I went to this gas station and tried tying the rope around it. No luck at all. This one comment mentioned getting a bead seal that would potentially help get it on, but I just didn't have a chance. Let's get on to the performance categories. Now, many of these are highly subjective, so take it with a grain of salt. And starting off with the installation. The order stays the same with the tubeless Shinko coming up the rear. Quite difficult to install as mentioned. You'll need to buy these 8.3mm valve stems, and then definitely use thread locker. I just tightened it enough so that it couldn't be turned too easily by hand, just on the stem itself. Make sure to turn it so that when it's rotating, it's facing backwards and can't catch on anything and twist itself up. This is more difficult with a 16-inch wheel. You'll have to use this rubber push insert style valve. Here's the code number that E-Riders uses. Now, best air pressure response. Once again, the Shinko and the tubeless version coming up at the rear. These are very sensitive to pressure. If you drop just 3 PSI, I can really feel the difference. It becomes squishy and doesn't hold its shape properly because it is a soft compound. Without the tube in there holding the shape, it's even softer feeling. So you've got to keep an eye on that pressure. I've been enjoying 33 PSI, and that is significantly different ride feel to the tube version at the same PSI, because it just seems to hold a rounder shape and it sits flatter on the road, so it feels heavier, which is very interesting. You have to pump it up to around 33 PSI to get a similar as 31 PSI with the tube version, but then it's starting to feel a bit jittery, too round. You know, you're getting a bit more train tracking and wobbles with that. Now I'm getting a slight pressure loss, but honestly, maybe that's just because I keep checking the pressure and it escapes a little bit of air all the time. And I'm not running any slime because I just find it scoops up the place, adds extra mass, and don't seem to need it. Another reason that the Shinko might be leaking a bit of air is because it's not tubeless ready, but we get away with it basically. So repairing punctures is a bit different with tubeless.
String plug, alias bacon strip. I've got a reamer to clean the hole, vulcanizing cement to coat the plug, an inserter to go halfway in, then pull out, and finally Occam's razor to cut the unnecessary bits.
Puncture and you can repair it on the go, so that's kind of handy. You will need to carry a pump and the strips, so of course, a bit of extra kit there. right, so after some hard riding, it does get some temperature in the tyre, and that results in an increased pressure, which is slightly enough to feel it. So this is what I got from 33.3 psi up to this value. And it's summer here in Australia, so quite a hot day, maybe 30 degrees here. So how about the learning curve? Well, the tubeless is much improved over the Kenda and the tube version. Because it's got the rounded profile, it's much steadier. I like to stand up a bit taller. I can comfortably crawl at slow speeds with the tubeless version. It's really nice. I've made a little adjustment to the fast ride feel here. I've changed it to the Kenda K262, then the Shinko, then the tubeless Shinko. And I've knocked the tubeless down in fast ride feel because it has less gyro, it's going to be a bit more jittery, and with the rounder profile, it's going to be wanting to be a bit more flighty and jittery, slightly more prone to wobbles. Alright guys, this video isn't sponsored, so I'd like to shout out my super comfy seat available on my store, triple layer density, customizable, and for the first time available with the veteran pattern. And I've got a new and improved base with its 3D printers, other accessories on there if you're interested. Cheers everyone. Now speaking of wobbles, I got the K262 as the best performer here, then the tube version, but that depends on your tyre pressure. If you go too high, 34, 35, rounds it out, start to have those problems. Now the tubeless Shinko comes in third, still over the Michelin Pilot Street 2, but I'm finding I'm getting a bit more wobbles just because it's quite a wide round tyre, and as I'm mentioning, it rounds it out the profile and it sits a bit flatter on the road, so it's going to be catching those edges and oscillating a bit more. When we come to gyro stability, I do put the tubeless Shinko below the K262 now, and that's simply because of the reduced rotating mass. It's not going to hold, well, I don't feel the gyro as much. It's kind of nice, it makes the whole wheel a bit more performance feeling, a bit zippier. Now, the big one for me is cornering performance, because I find this knobby pattern tips over quite a lot, particularly at the wrong tyre pressure. So that's the huge improvement with the Shinko 241 tubeless. It corners incredible. You wouldn't even know hardly that it's this knobby pattern. I really want to highlight this technique that I've got with the diagonal foot pressure, and I'm able to lock into the front pad and weight up my outside heel, and this really stabilizes the wheel through turns. Most important when you're going at higher speeds, throwing the wheel a bit more aggressively. This just stabilizes it a lot more with this knobby pattern, and I'm sure you could use it with other tires as well. It looks like the Shinko 241 tubeless is leaning over a lot more, but that's just because I'm riding a lot harder. So let's compare it to the Kenda. You can see my body position is a lot more awkward trying to keep that tyre from tipping over, whereas on the tubeless Shinko, I'm able to weight into the corner a fair bit differently to the Kenda. I put that as my favourite over everything else, and that's because it stands up a bit taller than the tubed version, feels a bit more weighty in the corners, so it gives you more support and confidence. But it's still leaning over with me as I need it, so less strain on the knees. As I mentioned, I do get knee problems if I corner too wide, such as the Michelin street tyre. Can I get your impressions of the tubeless tyre?
So look where you want to go.
Oh, man.
Say you want to turn the
Very
tape
sweet.
over, you don't want to turn over there.
I'm just,
You want to go.
oh man, it'll take me a bit to get used to the tyre, man. Just because I'm so used to the
Turn your head.
Pilot Street 2. The handling is so much different.
Right.
It's like, it wants to stand upright until a certain point, at which point it starts to it'll let you just start really going over. But then it's not like a sudden drop.
Yeah.
It's a bit more of a controlled one. So
I find it's kind of like almost the best of the knife edge and the full round street. It's like the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
kind of.
Like how when you get like the round street tires, you want that like where it's really touchy. So then like if you want to do like a quick, like you want to dodge something on the road and you just want to go, oh, you can do that without really moving the wheel that much.
Yeah.
Whereas like some of the pointy tires, you kind of have to like throw the wheel right over back and forth to do that sort of maneuver. But
sure.
this one will sort of do both. It will have like that twitchiness, but then also still let you ride right over on you.
For sure. Oh, I'm stoked you got to try it. Now the carving at Slalom has really improved as well. I knock it into second place, the tubeless version, and that's once again that rounder, flatter profile. So I've added a new category, acceleration here. Michelin comes out on top because it's a smaller diameter. It's going to really fly. And then the tubeless version comes in at second place. Something about it just gives me so much confidence accelerating. I think because the tubeless conforms so well to the road, it just feels unbelievably connected ride feel. And then I can just let it fly. And also the reduced rotating mass. That's probably a big part of it as well. Easier to get up to speed. We come to the braking. Now I really like the tubeless feel under braking. It's quite controlled, doesn't tip over as much into the cornering braking, which is a big downside of say your Kenda K262. You fall into that knife edge under braking cornering. So a lot of confidence, but with the rounder profile, it does shudder a bit more under braking. Now, a couple categories I forgot here. Seated riding is fantastic. It's my favorite on the tubeless variant, and that's because it has that knobby comfort versus the street tire, and the roundness makes it very predictable and controlled, and that's at slow speed as well as high speed. Stands you upright. However, high speed cornering, you really feel that in the turns. The wheels staying upright, you've got to lean over a lot. So when you're carrying speed through turns, that changes things somewhat. So comfort-wise, holy crap, tubeless wins here. It just feels like this is what the tire's meant to be. It's just like molding and conforming over bumps. It's incredible, smooths it out a lot. And because you're not risking the pinch punctures as much, you can run a lower pressure, say off-road, and it'll just suck up those bumps, roots, rocks even better. Now, if we come to the noise, this is definitely personal preference. Interestingly, without the tube, it's got a higher pitched whine to it. Now, my guess is that the tube, just that extra friction and mass in there, it's damping that sound somewhat. All right, so interestingly with train tracking, I have to knock the tubeless version down from the original one tier because it is flatter, rounder. It is grabbing the edges and pulling over with ruts a bit more. And that's quite bad on grass. I really don't like riding this on grass. The best one was the K262 with that sharper knife edge. And that's with the tube version of the Kenda. I forgot an important metric, and that's off-road performance, and it's terrible until I let out a bit of air, and I did that twice, got down to 25 psi. This greatly assisted it rolling over rocks and stuff without twisting because of its wide width, because it is a very wide tyre, so that makes it twist around on rocks uncomfortably when the pressure is too high. I've got a lot of confidence in the softer rubber with traction over the rocks and roots, fair bit of traction through the muddy sections as well, but the worn tread pattern didn't help that much. This is the great thing about tubeless, because you can run that lower pressure without fear of pinch punctures.
Oh man, the tire is strange. It's like, I know, I'm trying to be positive here, but like, I don't know. It's like it tips over really nicely.
Yeah.
But it doesn't quite turn as sharply as some other wheels. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I love the tire, but yeah, it works. You want to turn.
Yeah, it's definitely more stubborn. It's quite wide.
It is very.
So what about efficiency or the battery use? Well, this is bloody good because you got the reduced rotating mass, and it just feels more efficient without the tube in there. As you can imagine, there'll be a little bit of friction, and it's got to deform that tube, which is going to cause energy losses. So what about wet road traction? Well, Michelin obviously still wins there, but the traction of the tubeless, just the way it conforms to the road, it just gives you a lot more confidence with the softer rubber. I'm feeling better than with the tube. However, I'm still scared of riding in the rain because I had a pretty bad crash. I just went down pretty fast. Kenda Tyre on the wet. You know, cornering in the rain, it slipped out on the K262. So I'm not really a fan of wet riding anymore, particularly on the road. Now the dry traction, much the same. Just a lot of confidence from that road feel, so planted, flatter feeling on it. Bonking and jumping is interesting. It feels not as poppy, and it's kind of just like the tyre deforms around, say, the curb, and doesn't pop off like the Kenda or with the tube version, because it's so soft, and without the tube in there to support it, kind of just absorbs those bonks, which is good or bad depending on what you want to do. Now the berm angles, when you're hitting a berm, it's not as good. Have to knock it down one category here, because once again the rounder profile will twist a bit more. Nothing like the Michelin, but definitely a tier or two down from the other Kenda and the tube version. All right guys, wrapping up. This is the wear at 3,260 kilometers. So this is a fast wearing tire, and that just goes to show how soft this rubber is. But that softness gives you those benefits that I mentioned. Now my next tire is likely to be the Shinko 244. Very popular tire that's been highly requested. So be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see the comparison to that one. One of the big things is the pad positions. Because the cornering technique is so important for me, I position them upright a bit more than normal. And that's because I like to have my shins into the pads when cornering, particularly at higher speeds. Gives me a lot more stability, and then I can be straight onto the power, mid or even exiting the turn. That's just my particular style of riding, which I really enjoy. So these things all come into my scoring, which we'll get to right now. All right, let's tally the points for all of the tires, and keep in mind a lot of these points are for my preferred style of riding, which is you know, controlled braking without shuddering, being able to brake under turns, it not falling away in turns in a dangerous way. And this is particularly when riding at speed, resisting train tracking and wobbles. All of these are important factors for me. So looking at the tubeless variant, it doesn't actually win the most first places. However, it's kind of a jack of all trades, because I've got a lot of points in second position there. You can tally up and see that the tubeless wins with 68 points. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying it. it is very wide, so it does make the wheel feel a bit heavier, and it gives you some of those drawbacks of a round tire, like a bit more wobbles, bit harder to turn. But overall, this is what I've really been enjoying, with the extra carving ability, being able to turn with my knees in the pads still, and getting all those benefits of resisting train tracking and wobbles over the Michelin Pilot Street 2. And you can see that one is a specialist tire with a lot of first places, but those are all categories which aren't as fun for me, such as the grip in the rain, and those categories aren't bringing the joy of riding, so that's gonna knock it down a bit. And then the K262 also wins a fair bit, but also has a lot of last place, and that's because I put it as a really off-road specialist with that sharper V profile. It holds its line better over gravel and grass without twitching around and grabbing onto train tracking. All right, guys, hope that helps. Let me know if you have any comments. Ride safe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye, because it's tubeless time.